Hello, my name is Aaron Cavanagh and I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Post-Burnout.com. Post-Burnout.com is a culture website dedicated to venerating burnt-out artists the world over. This is our website's podcast where we publish full-length recordings of our interviews, which are sometimes the unedited versions of our site's articles and at other times are exclusives. If you're a returning listener, thank you for coming back, and if this is your first time listening, thank you for checking us out. We hope you enjoy and consider subscribing, giving the episodes a thumbs up if you're on YouTube, or giving it a rating if you're anywhere else. It really helps us out. Thank you. Alright, in this edition of Post-Burnout.com interviews, we talk with Anne DiGiovanni of the Los Angeles-based pop-punk project deegie about her debut album EXES, the concept of making an album about how all of her past relationships shaped who she is today, how the project was therapeutic for her, what her collaborator and husband learned about her whilst making this album, and much more. Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Very well. Thanks for joining me. It's really nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
Uh,
Aaron.
yeah. Actually, before
Yeah,
we
DG.
began, DG, is it? I wanted to make sure I was getting the pronunciation correctly.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the first thing I was going to ask, quite simply, I mean, there's a lot to kind of go on, I think, based on your background that I know of, and obviously based on kind of the themes of the album. I guess the first thing I was just going to ask, quite simply, I mean, it's like a bit about your kind of musical background. I mean, what was kind of like, I guess, your kind of earliest memories of music and kind of what got you into it, you know?
Yeah. Okay. I grew up with parents who loved music and always had the radio on. My mom played a lot of musical theater, like her old records around the house, and grew up going to Catholic church. So always sang the songs there and got into doing church music later on. But yeah, I was just exposed a lot by my parents to their favorites, kind of like the classics from the 60s, 70s, and then started like piano lessons and got into being a musician from there when I was 6.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. So, I mean, do you find that do you find that Catholic music has any influence over your current project?
Not as much the current project, but I mean it those like I'm a very melodic writer. I really love a good melody. So that comes from, I think, having that background. Like some of those classic songs from mostly from like the 60s and 70s era of Catholic church music. Yeah, like have really great melodies. So
Yeah, Beach Boys eat your heart out.
yeah.
Yeah, and then like obviously, I mean, like kind of as you grew up, I mean, my understanding is that getting into music professionally wasn't really what you had in the cards. I believe you were either studying or working as a lawyer. I wasn't quite sure what the information was on that, but were you working
Yeah.
as a lawyer before you started this project?
I was, yeah, for 12
Yes.
years.
Nice.
So I got quite a ways down the road with that. Let's see. I wanted to do music all my life, and um coming into college, it became apparent that like, okay, you have to really want to do it on a much more serious level. And my voice, I actually had some problems with vocal nodules in high school. So I was like, I decided to take the safer route and get just a regular humanities degree. And from there, I got a little bit swept up in like, okay, how am I going to make money and be stable? And so law school was the path that unfolded. I actually got sued my sophomore year of college for downloading music by the
No.
recording industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite a lottery to win. It was like only 400 students across the nation at that point got sued. So very bad luck. And that kind of opened my eyes to the possibility of entertainment law and copyright law and music being, something that I could get involved with as a professional and have a stable income and, like that kind of upwardly mobile career. So that's the path I went down and worked at a law firm for half my time. And that was very intense. And then ended up going in-house to an entertainment company. And that was a lot more fun and slightly less intense, but still just not quite what I wanted to do, was not my passion. So yeah, I decided to make the leap about 2 years
Yeah,
ago.
I believe like before that there was like you were doing a project on the side at the time, Only Bricks if I'm correct.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was wondering like what was that just kind of like a vehicle for creative input? Was it just something to do? I mean, what was the kind of I guess aim of that project? Was it kind of just like to do something to get your mind off kind of work?
Yeah, for sure. But also I think like I was always serious about it as well.
Hmm.
That is a project that was more of a duo between me and my husband, who's still my musical partner in DG, but now I'm the solo front woman of DG. So he and I had played in a cover band together back in New York, and stemming out of that, we started writing original songs. So we moved to California, we got married, and from there we were like, all right, we want to release music and play shows. That was really the drawing factor, was that we wanted to be able to play live and get our friends to come to shows because we love doing that. So we wanted to have music out there on the platforms to be able to, play something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was for fun. And then it steadily became more and more of a side hustle more than a hobby. And like I said, kind of evolved into, okay, let's take this leap and do this full time. And we did continue Only Bricks for a little while after we quit our jobs, but yeah, decided we needed to get a fresh start and do something different with DG.
Was there anything in particular that brought you to LA besides, I guess, the music scene there?
Yeah, coming to LA was just about getting a sort of fresh start.
Yeah.
I had been engaged to someone and broke that off, decided I didn't want what he wanted in terms of like the traditional life. Actually, is one of the songs from the record we just released. So it's Stop the Ride. Steve describes this
Okay.
process of like realizing, oh, I don't want kids. Like, I don't want to like move to the suburbs. So yeah, I was kind of starting over and wanted to try a new city, knew that LA had job opportunities for lawyers as well as like a good music scene for doing that in some capacity. So yeah, I came here in 2015.
Actually, forgive my stupidity on this topic, but I was wondering, like, when it kind of comes from studying the law in one state in the US versus another, I mean, do you have to kind of like relearn things, or is it kind of what's that process like?
Yeah, it's very annoying. You do, some states have like reciprocity with others, so you would just kind of re-sign up, like reapply and certify, but nope, not California. They want everyone to pass their bar exam. So yeah, I had
Yeah.
to sit for 2 out of the 3 days required at the time and study for all that. So yeah, not fun.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering about that because I'm not from a federalist country myself, so I'm always wondering how those
Ah,
kind of
yeah.
like things work. So that's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, and then like when it came to actually the kind of music that you were going to create with DG, I mean, what's that something that was pre-planned from the start, the kind of pop punk sort of um kind of music that you eventually end up doing, or what's that something that kind of came more gradually as you guys were experimenting?
Yeah, we decided to go all in on pop punk. I think one of the things with Only Bricks that made it harder to get to the right people that would like what we were doing was that everything we did was very eclectic. It was a mix of bedroom pop and hyper pop and
Yeah.
pop punk. And, there was like a little bit of everything and no concentrated amount of one thing. And with algorithms now, like it's just kind of impossible to draw someone to your page and have them want to stay if they're not seeing a consistency. So we knew we wanted something consistent for DG, and we have both loved pop punk since its inception. And just like that was music that I kind of came up on when I was in college and coming of age. So yeah, it just seemed like every time we would play a cover song just for fun, I would have all this joy like come across my face and just be so excited to be singing the song. So that was kind of the impetus for like, we want to do something we love and something that feels authentic to like what makes us happy.
Actually, I have to ask. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm kind of going in non-chronological order here,
That's okay.
but your background, in terms of like with pop punk, I mean, what were you kind of like listening to, in your younger days that kind of like inspired you, in pop punk? What were you kind of like loves, I guess, in the genre?
Yeah, I came to it a little bit sideways. Like I was not an emo kid going to shows. I was
Yeah.
not, I was more of a poser. I listened to whatever was in the mainstream being played at parties in college, and also I would say the guys that I was dating, whatever they would like burn for me on CD and whatever they were into and like were excited to say, check this out.
Yeah.
So a lot of it came to me that way. A lot of it was like single songs that were like bubbling up to the, kind of alt radio side of things. But yeah, the bands that I really got into were the Ataris,
Mm.
Newfound Glory, something corporate. And then later, it was actually later than college, but I got really super into Mariana's Trench, which I love.
Yeah. And
So
actually
yeah.
one thing like I was kind of like observing this, like I think there is like a real resurgence in pop punk because I kind of like I was coming of age during that era too, and I remember it actually being a lot more maligned than people would thought. Like it was kind of I don't know, it was kind of something that people seemed very critical of. I was wondering like, now you see the EPK that I received from you kind of like mentioned Olivia Rodrigo. I mean, I think she's very good kind of example of kind of incorporating pop punk into a kind of broader kind of pop music. And I've noticed in like a lot of bands now are kind of coming up who are kind of taking that mantle of pop punk and kind of running with it. Do you think people just needed time to catch up in the popular consciousness, I guess?
Yeah, and especially for women to be doing it. I think there was always an appetite. Like if you look at the history of rock, it's very male dominated, and
Mhm.
especially punk music. I mean, actually punk music might be a little more equal because of the nature of like the ideology behind punk music, which
Mhm.
is like, sort of disrupt the system. And so I think a lot of women have risen up in that field. But yeah, like especially with like the Blink 182 kind of Green Day era, like it was all guys and almost no women. And I think like we can all name the couple women that have broken through to the mainstream, Avril Lavigne and Haley Williams of Paramore. And,
Yeah.
I'm forgetting a few
I'd say
probably
Gwen
key
Stefani
people, but
probably, yeah.
yeah, Gwen
Yeah, so
Stefani,
yeah.
yes. So yeah, it's not many though, like compared to
Mhm.
the just tons of men. So I think like it has taken a longer arc to get to like women can make this music too. And there are a lot of really rad women doing it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I love
Yep.
Olivia's music and definitely I'm glad that she has brought it back to the mainstream.
It's actually because I know like some people in the pop punk scene. I mean, there've been accusations of abuse. Do you find like it's kind of an important thing now with so many kind of women in the field to kind of make it more of a safe space or to make it kind of more not just women but I'd say like non-binary people too. Just non-men basically. Do you find it's important to kind of try and make that a safe and inclusive space? And if so, what do you think the kind of the way of going about that should be?
Yes. Yeah, it's so important. What can I say? Like Um, I think it is going to be helpful to get more and more women and non-binary and queer people to gravitate toward this type of music, to start like putting themselves out there as producers, especially because so much of the like power in who gets to create and who gets to like mentor seems to rest with producers, unfortunately. It's just
Mhm.
like kind of we all need their skill in terms of being able to make the sound, hit the way we want it to draw people in. And it's not a singer-songwriter genre where just a guitar, can hack it really. Like it's like you want that big sound. So producers are essential, and we desperately need more non-male non-male producers in pop punk. So I'm hoping that like as more and more kids just generally start producing, that will mean that, more female, non-binary, queer people are part of that. And I at least am trying to seek those people out and find them to bring into my songs and, make those relationships because I would rather, I mean, there are some great, cis het men out there, I
Yeah.
know, but it's going to be just easier to trust the non-cis het male
No,
um
totally.
creators when it comes to making music that like has the integrity that I want it to have and gives the experience of safety and trust that I'm looking for.
Do you think that will then have a kind of trickling effect on the crowd too? Like maybe, women and non-binary people will become more inclined to kind of turn out to a show if they know that, people in the crowd aren't going to be dicks and aren't going to be disruptive and, harassing or anything like that. Do you think that will have
Mhm.
that effect too?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Everybody should feel safe at shows. I think generally the reputation of like mosh pits is actually that they are a
Yeah.
trustworthy space, that they aren't just violent and ridiculous. But yeah, like making things inclusive. I think artists can do that by speaking out, and I try to do that whenever I can. Like whenever I feel compelled and that it's relevant to what's going on. It's hard. It's like definitely tricky because you do alienate some people, but overall, I feel like I would rather alienate those people
Yeah,
who
no,
don't want everyone to feel safe and feel
yeah.
okay expressing who they are as a person. Like if you're not up for that, then like I don't really want you in my fandom anyway, or to be at my show anyway.
Yeah, it seems like a weird genre to be inclined towards if you're someone who is kind of like very rigid and conservative. It just seems like a very strange go. Yeah, I'm going to get into punk.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think now actually we are. I'd like to pick your brain about this a little bit if you don't mind. Like because again I'm sort of observing kind of like American politics from an outsider's perspective. It seems like there was kind of a narrative for a while of well some kind of right-wing conservative people or commentators in the States trying to get this notion going that conservatism was the new punk rock. I was wondering if you have
Hmm.
any opinions on that mantra?
Oh, I hadn't heard that. I think like that is a strategy that the right wing is employing to try to make particularly poor white people feel like you're persecuted, like you need to join us so that you'll like basically be able to step on the classes of people that are below you in the white supremacy order of things,
Right.
quite frankly. So like that's a sort of classist um mechanism to try to turn factions of people against each other who actually have more in common and could band together and overthrow the elitist ruling class
Yeah.
if they, recognized that we have more power together. But yeah, that makes me really disgusted that they're trying to, malign something like punk rock, which is not about those principles, with their agenda, which is just truly disgusting and evil these days. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a very strange thing to see happening, but I do think most people who are actually like involved in the scene aren't falling for it. And actually, when we're talking about kind of inclusivity, one other thing I was been kind of noticing at punk shows lately and kind of hardcore shows that a lot of times there is consideration for people with disabilities now that I just probably didn't see. Like I see a lot
Mm.
of people saying get into the pit if you're able to, you know what I mean? I see like that kind of
Yeah.
inclusive kind of language and consideration. So I do think
That's
like in a
amazing.
lot of ways the actual scene when you go to actual shows is not really reflective of what you see online. Basically, I'm just saying that real life isn't the internet, I guess.
Yes. Oh, so true. To good reminder for all of us.
Yeah. Well, I think we all get, kind of we can get kind of myopic with the at least I can. I'm speaking for myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I want to talk obviously about your new record. It came out about a week ago, if I'm correct, or maybe 2 weeks ago at this
Yeah.
point. Yeah, it's called Exes, and yeah, I mean it's such a really daring, I think, like really brave and kind of like very vulnerable record to put out for the first time. For sorry, as your debut, I mean. I was wondering like why did you choose this, I guess, as an introduction to the project? And well, obviously, I mean, you've had singles prior, but as kind of like the concept, as a conceptual debut, I guess.
Yeah, it was really just what was hot to the touch. I found my old journals around the time that we were transitioning to DG, and I started reading back through them and realizing like, oh, I was obsessed with these men that I was dating, and there's so much here. There's like all these different stories. We could really write a lot about them, and quickly kind of came up with the idea of like a song for each. and a friend suggested putting their names in the titles, which I just love for like the accountability of it. And
Yeah.
like, it's kind of the anti Taylor Swift where you're always wondering and guessing who the song is about. It's like, no, I'm just going to tell you, I'm not famous. I have nothing,
Yeah.
nothing to lose here. Their first names, they'll be fine. And they should be accountable. So
Mhm.
yeah, it just felt like, again, like the most authentic thing that I had in front of me, and that seemed relatable. And um it really was just like, once I got sucked into that former, past world of mine, I just kind of kept going down the rabbit hole.
When it came actually to structuring the album, I mean, where the people you went out with, were they was it put in kind of a chronological order, or was it just what kind of fit the orders of the songs? Because I noticed when I was listening to the record that, it does get, it kind of sort of has a roller coaster kind of effect where I feel like, it really starts off high, and then there's like some really quite challenging lows. When I say low, I don't mean in terms of like bad, to be clear.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
there's like
Thanks.
there's some low. Yeah, no, I think it's consistently great. But there's some lows that you get into, and then kind of um rises up again towards the end. It's a very bad analogy.
No,
But
yeah.
but I was wondering, yeah, I mean, was it kind of how did you kind of structure the actual songs in terms of the theme?
Yeah, it was written sort of randomly for what we felt we could tackle in the moment. And yeah, sometimes, I mean, we had like our list of all the possibilities. And so we would kind of, this is me and Joseph, my husband, who writes with me for the project, and we would like pick the one that felt like, okay, we can tackle that one today. Um, there were some that like we tried to get into, like Eric number one is the one that comes to mind where, sorry, one second.
No, it's
Sorry, the dog's heading out for her hike. So Eric number one was the one where he's my first boyfriend, my high school, love and heartbreak. And so we knew there's definitely going to be a song about him, and tried for like multiple sessions to find a way in and just couldn't. So some of them like we started, but then they sat and they breathed and we wrote another song or whatever. In terms of the track order, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. We wanted it um to feel like a journey and to have a climactic moment with gray area for sure. But then to end on a more empowered note, which is why we chose those three songs as kind of the last few. Because they do get back to being bangers, and also the themes of them are about independence and sort of like reclaiming my power as a woman. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, it really does feel like, kind of like no holds barred. I mean, there were times when I was listening to the record, it was like, I don't know if I should know this, or I felt like I felt like I was intruding on someone else's like business in a way.
You and my dad both don't want to know.
No, it's not that I don't know, just like I feel like I shouldn't, like, but
Yeah.
no, it is like really like again, like like I guess like a common word that's being associated with the record is brave, but it really does feel like just very daring and very challenging, and just like one hell of a of a proper introduction. I was wondering, like from your perspective, is there, and you don't have to talk about this like in detail if you want, but was there anything that like you kind of like left off? Is there anything that in the editing process you felt that was, I don't know, you felt like, I don't know, just not ready to share, I guess.
Hmm. I mean, I'm sure that there is. I can think of like, some details about these people's lives that I still don't feel comfortable sharing in an interview, or like even in my social posts around the music that could have been incorporated into the songs. But yeah, out of like respect for those people, knowing that there's a good chance they'll hear the song, and or find the song someday and see their name in the title and know like, okay, that one's about me. And we have mutual friends, still, who potentially or will will hear or have heard this music. So yeah, there's like some things that are a little bit too sensitive that relate more to like their story than mine,
Mhm.
that didn't make it in the songs, I guess. But yeah, we tried to like really find the sensory details of what it felt like to be in that moment, what it felt like to be with that person, and also to reflect like the hard truth of how they treated me, how I perceived it. Obviously, it's one-sided. Obviously, it's just my perspective. So you're not getting, an objective viewpoint of it, but
That is
yeah,
art.
like wanted it to be hard hitting as with all of the DG songs that I do. So
Yeah, well, art is subjective. I think people aren't gonna like get like objective truth, but like it definitely like I mean the intent of the album seems to be, as you mentioned, to kind of like talk about your own kind of personal growth rather than the individuals themselves. It's kind of it's a very interesting. I think it really is like a very interesting concept for an album, just talking about how kind of I guess the other people in your life kind of shape who you become, and it almost
mhm.
seems like I don't know, like therapeutic journaling in a way.
Yeah.
From your perspective, I mean, did you kind of when you had the album kind of fully written, did you kind of look back and go, oh shit, like I didn't think of it like this, or I guess this had more of an impact on me than I thought, or did you kind of I guess come to any realizations that you hadn't previously known?
Yeah. Yeah. It really was like therapy, and it really has been life-changing in terms of looking back at my patterns and my propensity to want to be in a relationship, to want to stay in a relationship, even when it's not working or I'm not being served, like my propensity to need validation from another person and to only place my worth in someone else.
Mhm.
My tendency to escape into fantasy and obsession, and just like I'm, kind of an OCD anxious thinker. So that has played out in my romantic life, just like seeing it all laid out and going through all those sessions of talking about these experiences, like it's pretty undeniable. So it's been just a big kind of zoom out moment. I also turned 40 in the spring as we were finishing recording the
Happy
record.
birthday.
So thank you. Yes. So yeah, it was kind of like glaring me in the face, and it's been a lot to process and to start to like piece together how I want to learn and grow from it. Like I'm doing a lot of personal work on myself to heal all that and to try to like keep my worth in me instead of putting it outside myself.
And the other thing I was wondering, because you mentioned that your husband is your collaborator in the project, I was wondering, did he like learn new things about you through this record too, or did everything on here, did he kind of know?
Yeah, I know he learned a lot. He he loves to say like he loves to joke about it first, that it's just a pretty absurd experience to write an entire album about your wife's exes.
Mhm.
But yeah, he talks about how at first he was really scared and just didn't, it's a lot to like I think as a partner to confront that your partner has been with these other people. There's maybe elements of being threatened by like, oh, does she have fond feelings about some other people? And, how does that stack up to how she feels about me? So like that was the kind of fear that he had. But over time, he said that he really got into the process and learned a ton about me and appreciates like knowing me better in all those ways. So it's brought us closer together. It's brought us like, farther apart at times when there's been conflict. Obviously, with any creative process, there's going to be moments of tension, and we work so closely together that that's definitely true. But I think, again, overall, with like the growth that I'm trying to accomplish now, like it's making our marriage stronger. And so I'm really grateful that he's along for that ride and he's down to look at it.
Perfect. I guess one final thing I'll ask is, when you kind of like, I feel like when you kind of get into these kind of like personal stories and you're trying to extrapolate kind of how you're feeling and tell these kind of stories, I think a lot of times, um, beyond just the kind of like therapeutic benefit for you as an individual, I think another aspect to it is actually potentially aid people who are listening to it who may be going through similar things, or I guess like to kind of establish a pattern that other people can relate to, because it is yeah, I think everyone has that kind of relation with music where, a song that they love suddenly becomes relevant because the situation in their life has changed and they look at the lyrics at it from a different perspective. I was wondering, like, especially as you were mentioning the song like Gray Area, and I think that's like, the most haunting and daring and kind of standout song on the record, from my opinion.
Thanks.
Like again, it seems like kind of aiding people to sort of tell them like you're not alone, and also this is abuse, and it's actually trying to
Yeah.
to call something out. And also the album is full of, I think, by using these X's, I think it's full of like social critique around things like toxic masculinity. I was wondering, from your perspective, from a sorry, from kind of putting this out into the world, what are you hoping that, I guess, other people can kind of glean from hearing your experiences?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head with like you're not alone, and also this is abuse. In terms of gray area, that song. Because like the whole point of where we ended up centering that song was um that so often those experiences leave you confused and just bewildered as to what even happened. And you, in order to process the trauma, you'll try to befriend the abuser. Like you'll actually want to get closer to them. You'll want to justify and rationalize and tell yourself like, oh no, they meant well. And, they were into me and I'm into them and it's all fine. Like your mind will just jump through these hoops in order
Mhm.
to not have to face the pain of what actually happened. So that's what I went through. And I feel like for other people who might have had a similar, like, confusing gray situation, maybe this can help them to start looking at and unpacking what really happened. And whether it's to hold somebody accountable or just to like have peace within themselves that they can look at the pain, feel it, get through it, move on. Like that would be amazing if I can do that for one person. And like I think I've already seen at shows with some people coming up to me that is such a deep point of connection. So I'm just really grateful for that. I do feel like it's going to be hard to talk about, but it's a purpose for this music to be out there. And then like for the record as a whole, I think like, yeah, it goes back to what I was saying about seeing my own patterns. Like there might be other people who are serial daters who can recognize themselves in one or more of these stories and can look back and say like, okay, maybe these parts of what I did were not great and I want to grow from that, but like these parts were like messed up and those people sucked. And like to just kind of get clarity through hearing someone else's story that like, oh wait, I relate to that so much. And like, oh yeah, that guy was kind of problematic or whatever
Sure.
it is, or like, oh wow, I was ridiculous back then. Like, I'm so glad that I have had growth now and I can kind of see how far I've come. Like any of that, I think is part of the nostalgia of this project and the self-reflection.
And just as a musical aid, I mean, with the kind of pop punk sensibilities, as we're kind of like mentioning the pop punk instrumentation, I mean, how do you find that kind of like because you were kind of like talking about the nostalgia of actually kind of like diving into these journals and to kind of um kind of like reconsider your positions on a lot of or your opinions on a lot of these guys, and to kind of analyze your memories. I was wondering, did um the kind of nostalgia of the music from your younger years kind of like also kind of creep into that, or how that kind of like how the relation of nostalgia from what you were doing in terms of like writing the lyrics, in terms of like conceptualizing what the project would be, and actually putting the tracks down, did they merge?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's very poetic that, songs about Dan and PJ and Zach and other people on this record are so steeped in the sounds that they kind of brought into my life and really influenced who I was becoming as a young woman. And then now later have influenced the music that I'm making about them. Like it's all very circular like that. But yeah, we always want to aim for also sounding modern and sounding like 2024 and what's our spin on it. So
Mhm.
I think like if you're truly a discerning music fan, you can hear that we're using, pretty modern production sounds and doing it our way, within the scope of the genre. So I love that I get to like add just a little drop into the ocean of pop punk.
Perfect. I think I've asked you everything, DJ, and you've been very gracious for your time. I guess the final thing I'll just say is, yeah, what do you kind of, now that the album's out, what do you kind of have kind of coming up? Is there anything you'd like to plug? And just in general, is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, we are planning a show in LA to celebrate the release of the record. It's going to be EXES the musical, which is kind of a
Okay.
one-woman show-ified version of this. And so I already read from my actual journals when I perform our live show now, by way of like telling the stories. I'll read the diary entry that relates to the song. And so there's going to be more of that, but also we're building a like video montage in between songs that's going to give context to the time that the relationship took place, the pop culture moments that were happening, the music of the time that was influential, and all of that. And plus some like, archival fun kind of photos and videos. So yeah, look out for, just follow me on Instagram to learn more about when that's going to be, hopefully October. And I'm just excited to get more music out, probably starting in November on the next phase.
Perfect. Thanks very much for your time, DJ. Enjoy the rest of your day, and it was very nice talking with you.
Thanks so much, Aaron. Just to
Uh,
ask, is this going to be, you're going to do a written piece, not a video? Like,
well, I never use the video. Sometimes, if you don't want me
okay,
to use it
cool.
as a podcast piece, that's fine. I never use the video anyway. I just use the audio.
Yeah, okay, audio's great. Just checking
Perfect.
because I was out for a run. All right, thank you.
No, no
All
worries. Thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
right, you too. Have a good one.
Bye. Thank you for listening to that episode of Post-Burnout.com interviews. We're an independent venture run by yours truly, and as I said at the beginning, liking, rating, subscribing, and sharing really helps us out a lot. If you're feeling extra generous, we do have a PayPal donation link in the episode description, but don't feel obligated, of course. We've also begun releasing occasional exclusive episodes on Spotify, so subscribe there if you'd be interested in hearing those. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.